Chapter 20 of The Tale of Miss Kitty Cat. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. A Long Journey. By sunrise, Miss Kitty Cat had trotted at least a mile along the road that passed the peddler's house. She wanted to get a safe distance away before the family got up and turned loose the dog that had barked the night before when she arrived. Miss Kitty remembered clearly that the wagon had been climbing a long hill before it turned into the peddler's dooryard. So without hesitating, she started down the road. She knew that in that direction lay Pleasant Valley and her home at Farmer Green's. Having put the first mile of her journey behind her, Miss Kitty stopped beside a little brook and drank her fill of cool, sweet water. She was very thirsty, because she hadn't a drink since the evening before. A pretty wood stretched beyond the brook, tempting Miss Kitty Cat to explore it. At that hour of the morning were many birds twittering among the trees, and spry chipmunks were frisking about in search of their breakfast. Miss Kitty Cat just naturally began to think of her own breakfast. "If I were at home, Mrs. Green would be setting a saucer of milk on the woodshed steps about this time," she murmured. "But now I must shift for myself." Luckily Miss Kitty was quite able to find something to eat, as a surprised meadow mouse soon discovered. After breakfasting, Miss Kitty lingered a while to tease the birds, who scolded her shrilly, calling her a tramp and telling her to get out of their woods. Of course Miss Kitty had to stay there for a time after that, to let the birds know that they couldn't frighten her away. She scared them almost out of their wits by threatening to climb up where their nests were, but she didn't do more than sharpen her claws against a tree trunk. That alone was enough to throw them into a panic. At last, after she bothered the birds quite enough, Miss Kitty Cat set off for Pleasant Valley once more. Sometimes she traveled through the fields, sometimes she jogged along the roads, sometimes she jumped to the top of a stone wall and used that for a highway, and always when she heard a creak and rattle of a wagon, as the sun rose higher and higher, she crept into the bushes and hid until she had the road to herself again. If Miss Kitty hadn't been homesick, she would have thought her adventure a great lark. But somehow she couldn't get Mrs. Green's house out of her mind, especially the thought of the kitchen, with its delicious odors of 7-layer cakes baking in the oven, and doughnuts frying on the top of the range, made Miss Kitty's nose twitch, and her own particular warm spot under the range, where she basked away long hours. When she recalled that, it was no wonder that her pace quickened. Perhaps Miss Kitty Cat herself couldn't have told exactly how she knew the way back to Farmer Green's place. No doubt she wouldn't have told had she known, for she was one of the kind that kept such things to themselves. She never even explained to old dog Spot afterward where she spent the 3 nights that she was away from the farm. Anyhow, Miss Kitty Cat kept plodding along, and one afternoon, when she came out of the patch of woods on a hilltop, she saw something looming right ahead of her that looked familiar. It was Blue Mountain, and she knew that on the other side of it lay Pleasant Valley and her home at Farmer Green's. End of chapter 20.